Hi everyone, and welcome to LeThans Art. We're here for a special episode with my friend Nicole.
Thank you for having me, Thanasi.
Thank you. We're going to be demonstrating how to paint on cloth. Nicole, you want to say anything?
Sure. So Thanasi and I have been working at a youth camp for how long now?
8 years,
10
10 years.
So we're coming up on a decade. And one of the projects that we've enjoyed doing is painting a tapestry with the campers. And today, Thanasi will be painting by himself, but this is also an excellent group project where everybody gets to be part of the action.
Usually we paint on a much bigger size, but we're going very small today. So yesterday, as a sample, I did this tree. So I'm gonna go ahead and draw a different version. So I'm gonna be sketching and Nicole's gonna be talking about some materials. So you can just shoot.
Okay, there's some important things you need to think about before you begin a project like this. And the number one thing is you want to make sure that the paints that you're using are compatible with the fabric that you're using. We are using 100% cotton today, and cotton is nice, it absorbs the paint well. But when you're picking them, if you're going to be using a synthetic fabric, you want to make sure that the paints that you're using are compatible, otherwise they won't become permanent. And then you'll have done all your work and it will end up washing out. So today we're using paints from a company called Jacquard, and they have different types. One is Dynaflow. Oh, that's not Dynaflow. This one is. They have Dynaflow, and when you what you get with this product is that it's more like a watercolor. It's light fast, so that it's very thin, and it will give you more of a watercolor transparent effect. But if you're looking for something more opaque, they have a couple of options, and this one is Jacquard textile color. And when you shake this versus the Dynaflow, you can hear the Dynaflow sloshing around. This one has a thicker body to it, and it's going to allow less light through. But you can use them together, or you can just use one type, depending on the piece that you're working on. We're going to use a mixture today, and one of the best things about these paints is that you're not just stuck with this shade or this shade or this shade. You get to use your palette, okay? You get to use your palette and mix the colors to the shade that you would like. So it's not like you're stuck with just what's in the jar. You can make the exact shade for your project. There are a couple of things that you can do before you begin your project. You don't have to, but they can be helpful, especially if you want a more watercolory effect. So there's this substance, which is called soda ash, and it's a dye fixative. So what you do is you soak your fabric in a solution of the soda ash and water, and it preps your cloth to absorb the paint and retain it better. There's also, I don't know if what company makes it, but there's a detergent called, I think it's Synthrapol, and they're in the process of making a textile. They use different chemicals, and that particular detergent, what it does is it removes them, so that your paint, your dye, does not interfere with any of the chemicals that were on it from being processed. So that's a real a real plus. Sometimes doing the prep work is definitely worth it, right, Thanasi?
It is.
It is, because when we were practicing with certain projects using fabric dyes and paints, you can do a beautiful job, especially if it's a group project. It's kind of tragic when then you wash it and it doesn't stay in the fabric and remain quite as vibrant. So a little bit of prep work goes a long way. So what color are you mixing over there now?
So I'm trying to make a brown for this tree, and obviously I don't have brown in front of me, so I'm using a combination of yellow ochre, red, and like the tiniest bit of black.
And we noticed that yesterday, right? A little bit of black goes a long way.
You don't want too much black because then it'll make it dark.
Right. And I see that you have a little scrap next to you of the same cloth we're using. Why is that?
Just to sample some paints in case I need before I go on.
Yeah. Before you commit to adding the color to your project, it's a great idea to have a piece of the exact fabric that you're using so that you can get that perfect shade and perfect thickness. So can you add water to these to thin them out?
You can.
What effect does that have?
It's almost like watercolor.
So it makes it more like watercolor?
Yeah. I mean, even more so with acrylic than watercolor, to tell you the truth.
It's more like acrylic?
Yeah.
Do you know if they have any where you can, the paint's so thick that you can actually do some relief on your work? Because I know they sell like puff paints and things like that, usually in the kids' art section. But I'm wondering if you could actually build up. I don't have an answer to that question.
Me either.
Maybe that's our next adventure, Thanasi. He's very particular. He will work and work and work till he gets just that perfect shade. It's a little bit different because on a canvas, you could just take a bunch of white and go over any mistakes. But on this, once you apply,
then you're committed.
Then yes, you're locked in. So you want to have a good idea where you're going. But you practice a few sketches beforehand, right?
Yeah, so I made these quick 1-minute sketches yesterday.
Although if it's your first time, sometimes it's nice just to get yourself an assortment of fabric paints and set it up like a canvas, and then just kind of do abstract and just get used to the medium. What we did to make our frames is we took a wooden frame, and then it's a two-person job, but we took the fabric and he held it really tight, and I used a staple gun to staple it on. And then you need to
parent supervision is advised.
Okay, exactly. We had a few flying staples, so definitely you want an adult to help you with that. But try to have 2 people. It's very frustrating to try to staple the cloth to the frame when it's just you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
as I'm continuing to mix this, I keep on, because you're painting on cloth, the cloth absorbs your paint, so I keep on adding paint to the palette.
let's maybe mix a little bit extra.
So I'm using an eyedropper right now. And this is bubbling on me right now.
Having some bubbles. Now, can you go over, when you applied your paint and it didn't completely penetrate the fabric, can you go over it with a water wash and will it fan out or no?
You can, but you have to be careful. Like when I messed up that squirrel.
Yes, he added a squirrel to the tree he did yesterday because I absolutely adore squirrels. And the squirrel ended up, when he put the water wash over it, it spread out the paint kind of into a little bit of a brown blob, right? But you could go over and try to fix that up. You just can't fix it up as much as you could if you were using acrylic or oil on a canvas.
This is clogged.
It's clogged. Eyedropper malfunction. And you certainly want to have some newspaper or something down underneath your frame with the canvas. Most of what you're doing, you're not going to press down and hit the table, but sometimes if you're doing a more forceful stroke, it may touch the table. If you are doing a large tapestry, you have a couple of options. You could make a giant frame and then staple on your fabric, or at camp, what we've done is had a couple of tables that we could apply either duct tape or thumbtacks and tack it and get the proper tension. The campers really enjoy coming in and picking out the section of the tapestry that they want to work on. And in the end, you see everybody's, brush strokes and kind of a little bit of different techniques, but it all seems to come together very well. Wouldn't you say?
It probably takes like 3 or 4 days to get a tapestry finished, because a couple years ago I got it done in 2.5 days, 3.
Wow. And what's nice is when the campers come into the arts and crafts building, one of the first things they'll do is come over and see how the tapestry is coming along since they were last there. We average, I would say, around between 90 and 100 campers. So from the youngest ones, our first group is age 7 to 9, 8 to 10, there we go. And then 11 to 13, and then 14 to 16. And it's nice to have it be a multi-age project, and the older campers really like that. And their counselors get involved, in some of the other staff, like the kitchen staff. They'll come down and do a piece. How's the brown coming?
It's fine. I just need to keep an eye on painting this.
Yeah. It's definitely more absorbent than working on a prepared canvas that you would use for acrylic or oil.
I wouldn't have to keep on mixing this if I was working on wood right now.
No, right, exactly. So it's, although the fabric paints are highly pigmented, so a little goes a long way, you definitely need more than you think. And that's why practicing is important. So Thanasi picked from a series of photos of different trees that he liked. Really beautiful photos, some talented photographers. And this piece of wood that from the photo he's painting now had a nice twist to it.
This is taking longer than I thought.
Okay. Now, if you had one of these in the works, could you stop for the day and then come back, or do you suggest doing this all in one sitting?
Oh, it's gonna take multiple days.
So it's okay to let it dry in between?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
It also depends on the size of your canvas.
Right. The one you were showing me earlier is quite large.
Yeah, that's the one that took me.
These fabric paints or dyes, you'll hear people refer to them both ways. They even come in metallic or pearlescent colors, so if you're into a little bit of sparkle, then they definitely have options for you. You're not going to find these products at most art stores. You're definitely going to want to either order online or call ahead to see if they have them. They're a little bit harder to find than acrylics and oils or watercolors, but they come in a beautiful assortment of colors. And if you have a large tapestry going and you're going to use a lot of colors, I know that we've gotten in the past what's called a class pack, right? Class pack, and that comes with the brushes, all the colors, great instructions. Because the first time we did this, we just kind of went with it, right?
The year after COVID?
Yes. We just kind of went with it. Luckily, we were successful. As art teachers, sometimes you just get a whim and you decide to do a project that you haven't done before. Just like they say at your house, if you're having company, don't cook a recipe that you haven't tried before. But everybody once in a while does. This was our first adventure with painting on cloth. It was kind of just let it rip and see what happens.
So I got most of the base down. I'm gonna add some shadows to this. I'm gonna add some blue.
Blue for the sky or blue for?
Blue for the shadows of the tree.
Shadows. People often just head for the black when they're trying to do shadows. Why do you recommend that?
If this was watercolor, I don't even touch black, to tell you the truth, unless I need to put a little detail. Any medium I use for shadows, I usually go blue. And especially right now where I use it in ochre, it's a blue and yellow or an orange is a compliment.
It's a compliment, okay. So it looks like you're using the black and white paint to darken or lighten your shade, but not to use it necessarily straight up. I mean, unless you're doing a black outline, right? Or lettering. The blue does complement the yellow ochre.
Just a few touches of blue. You don't need the whole thing. Now, it's coming out green, which is fine because it's a tree.
Now, if people are going to come in and do shadows, do you recommend adding the shadows while your base coat is still somewhat moist, or do you think that you should wait until it's totally dry to do it?
It depends. For this medium?
Yes.
You can go either or.
Do either.
I'm experimenting right now.
Okay.
It's on the preference of the person.
And you could do lettering with this as well. If you do your lettering lightly in pencil, then you can go over it.
No, I'm not lettering anything, so I don't have to worry.
You don't have to worry about that.
All right, I'm gonna go into some trees.
Okay, let me know if you need a color.
I think I have it all.
Oh, we forgot to say that when you embark on a project like this, you probably want to have your own brush set for this medium. If you have really nice brushes for watercolor, acrylic, or oil, I don't suggest using them, especially if they're a nice expensive set.
Just for this?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, keep them separate.
My watercolor brushes and acrylic brushes are the same. But
Oh, they are the same?
yeah.
But you didn't want to use, we use new brushes for this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do a touch of this. So this turquoise, I don't know what color this is.
It says, let's see, emerald green.
So this is watery. Why is that?
I think it has to do with the
Some of these are more waterier than the rest of them.
So the Dynaflow, the one that says Dynaflow on the front, is going to be the wateriest. But different pigments in the paint can have an effect on that. So definitely there's some variability.
So for these leaves, you don't want to just go and start rubbing because it's going to look like a big blob. So I'm just dabbing leaves and suggesting leaves.
Do you have some favorite brushes for this type of painting? Do you like flats or?
I use like rounds and flats and washes.
Okay.
And this.
Fan brush.
Which I might go into in a second.
And I think each jar, you can buy starter sets from various makers of fabric paints, but you can also, so a starter set's a good way to get going because they give you, it's a good discount. But then if you get the starter set and you know what projects you're doing, they also sell them individually. So you can go to the art store and know what project you have in mind, have your starter set that's going to be a lot of your colors you use all the time, and then pick out specific colors per project, right? The class pack comes with every color that they make, which is nice. So if you're a teacher, I think that your students would really like to try this because it's something they most likely, especially if they're younger, have not done before. They may have done tie-dye, which is a little bit different, but to be able to express your design on fabric is usually exciting. Some options that you can try out are tote bags. You could do this on a canvas or cloth tote bag.
My personal favorite, and I've had people make it for me, ice dye compared to tie dye.
Okay, so you want to talk a little bit about ice dye later?
Can you talk about ice dye?
Sure, I'll finish this and then I'll get right to it. Some other things other projects that I've done. So we had a baby shower and we wanted to do a group project for one of our friends that was awaiting the birth of her child. So we drew out kind of like a geometric pattern, kind of like I would say like a flower type pattern, and had that ready. There's a product that we don't have with us, but it's a water-based resist. And what that is, it seems kind of like it's wax, but it washes out, and you put it in a squirt bottle. So you draw your design on your fabric lightly with pencil, and then you use this little squirt bottle and you go around all the different areas that you want to be separated, where you don't want the paint to bleed into the other section. Now, Thanasi's not doing that today because he's doing something that's more of a painting. But if you wanted to have white between your colors, you could use the resist, and you apply that, let it dry, and then wherever that resist is, the paint will not go. It will refuse to penetrate there. And then afterwards, we'll talk about finishing it in a little bit. And when you wash it, it'll be gone, but those areas that had the resist applied to them will remain white. And I believe they have a black resist as well if you wanted a black outline. So you can see like that, if that was part of your setup, it would take quite a long time with a tapestry. But we did this on the tapestry for the baby shower because we wanted people to pick different sections to work on, because it would be hard with a lot of people to combine all the design elements together and make it look coherent. So we separated it, and people came and they had some appetizers and had talked with the mom-to-be, and she saw everybody making what was the top fabric of a quilt. And then afterwards, we'll talk about what you do when you're done painting.
I'm just about done painting.
Okay. So what we did was we got some batting and we dyed a bottom piece of fabric, and then we brought it to a quilter with a long arm machine quilting, long arm machine, sewing machine, there we go. So it has a really long arm, and they take it in the frame, and then they stitched along the different outlines of the design to attach the front of the quilt to the back. And what that did was it gave a little bit of relief, so that it was like flower petals, so they were a little bit puffy, and then where the stitches were, they'd go down, and then other areas would be puffy. And she was very pleased when she got a nice, vibrant quilt that was designed by all of her friends. And then another time, we did onesies. So we had a new baby on the way, and we got a bunch of 100% cotton onesies. So the little like t-shirts that go underneath and snap so you can change the diaper. And we got a bunch of them, and we had people draw out their designs on them. And then each person that came, they painted their own design. And we got the onesies in different sizes so that the baby could have some hand-painted onesies as they grew throughout their first year. And that was really, really nice. Now you want me to talk about ice dyeing?
Yeah.
Okay.
As I'm redoing a squirrel.
As a what?
As I'm repainting a squirrel right now.
A pin. Oh, he's taking a second go at the squirrel. So ice dyeing is another technique that maybe you could do sometime. So you get an article of clothing, and it works well with cotton, silk, rayon, bamboo fabrics, hemp fabrics, tencel, a lot of the natural fabrics. You could probably do it with some synthetic fabrics as well, but you just always want to make sure that your dye is compatible. So what you do is you make a tub of the soda ash, you soak whatever fabric you're going to dye, you get a plastic tub, and then you get like a cookie cooling rack and put that in the tub. You scrunch your fabric. You don't want it all in a ball. You want to scrunch it and kind of lay it out as much as you can. And then I think we used a dye called Procyon, and it's a powdered dye. And you get make kind of a couple different color palettes so people can choose. And they actually sprinkled powdered dye on top of the damp fabric. And then you have a big cooler full of ice, and you put the ice, so it goes like this. There'll be a tub to catch the water when the ice melts, then a cookie cooling rack, and then the fabric that's been soaked in soda ash, and then you sprinkle the colors that you want, and you can even leave some areas that are white. You don't necessarily have to have color everywhere. And then you make a big mound of ice and let the ice melt and do the work. And it kind of flows, wouldn't you say it kind of has like a watery, looks kind of like how water would flow?
I guess I haven't actually done it, so I can't.
You haven't done it. He's just appreciated us doing it in arts and crafts. That's been a big hit. That's another thing that you could do in the classroom or with an after school group. You could do it on a t-shirt. We did it on silk scarves. Silk is really nice and not as expensive as you think. You just want to make sure that it's 100% silk and compatible with your dyes. But it's an alternative to tie-dye. So if say you have a camp and you're looking for a new project and you've done tie-dye year after year after year, sometimes to kind of freshen it up a bit and kind of do a little bit of a different effect, you could switch over to the ice dye. And there are all sorts of videos that you can find on fabric painting with these products. You can find videos on preparing your fabric, choosing a fabric. There's lots on fabric painting, but also on ice dyeing. We've done shibori, which is indigo dyeing. That's fun.
So I'm just gonna cut you off in 2 seconds. I just put a water wash over this, and I did not go over the squirrel this
You
time.
did not go over the squirrel. So if you were not happy at how, say it was more opaque than you wanted, is that why you added the wash?
I just gave it a nice effect. And speaking of effects, I'm gonna do the last.
Oh, the special stuff.
So if you really wanna make your cloth painting or your tapestry painting, whatever you wanna call it, kind of look very sparkly, I'm now putting salt on top of this.
Is that regular table salt?
Yeah.
What's it gonna do?
It gives it an effect and makes it sparkle. You want to talk about?
You gonna leave it on there?
I'm gonna let it sit for a few minutes.
Hmm?
I'm gonna let it sit for a few minutes and rub it in. You want to talk about what the salt does?
Sure. So the salt, it kind of attracts and repels the dye. So it wherever the salt is, some areas it'll push away the dye, and then the dye will kind of go to a different area and give it kind of like you said, it's not actually sparkly. It's not going to be shiny, but it will give some almost like it's like a special effect, right?
Yeah.
A special effect. And you can experiment with fine salt versus coarse salt. Don't go over the squirrel.
All right, so that's my painting. We're gonna you want to let this sit and dry overnight?
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's important that we talk about this, right?
Yeah.
So just as important as preparing your fabric properly and choosing the right fabric that's compatible with the medium you're using, you also have to process your fabric after you're done with your project. And this would be really sad if someone forgot about this. So you're gonna let it dry. While it's still a little damp, if you want the salt effect, apply that, and then let your project dry. Now, I like to be a little extra cautious and let it dry for a day or so. You could even let it dry for a week. It's dry, but I feel that if you let it dry at least for a day, it really gives that time for the pigment to get into the fabric. What do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then...
And you want to let the salt sit so the next day you can just shake off.
Shake it off, right. Let the salt do its work. And if you put the salt on when it's dry, it's not going to make have that special effect. You want to put it on while it's still wet. And if you don't think it's wet enough, you can dab a little water over it. So the most important thing, because otherwise you might want to cry, is after it's done, you're going to remove the staples on the side, or if you have it tacked to a table, if you're doing a large tapestry. And once it's dry, you're going to put paper towels over the part of it or the entirety of it, depending on whether it's a large tapestry or a canvas size. And you're going to put your iron on high. Now that's if you're using a natural fabric. If you're using synthetic, you always want to put it to the synthetic section temperature, because that will be much lower than a natural fiber. And you want to take your time with this. These dyes, paints need to be heat set. So by taking your fabric, placing, this is just a regular piece of paper, putting it over it, and really spend your time going over it. You want to spend about 5 minutes doing a section about this size. You really want to take your time, but you don't want to leave it in one spot. But you don't want to move it really fast. You want to be very slow and very steady, and that activates the fibers to hold on to the dye. So when you wash it afterwards, you don't lose the vibrancy. It remains vibrant, right?
Yeah.
And it will change. So you're going to wash it. Okay, so the first thing, sometimes you'll hold it out over a faucet and use a sprayer and get some of it out. But other times, it works just as well. You put it in the washing machine, and I believe it tells you what temperature to do. I'm thinking it's cold.
I think it was cold, yeah.
I think it's cold. Although you're using heat to set it, I believe you wash it in cold. And then that will take any of the dye paint that hasn't become fused with the fiber, and it will get rid of it. And then you can turn these into pillows, right? You could make it a pillow. It could be a wall hanging, a tapestry. It could be an article of clothing, like a custom t-shirt or hoodie.
Yep.
You gonna make me a custom hoodie?
Maybe one day.
Maybe one day.
Anyways,
Big squirrel.
Yeah. Well, anyways, I think that we've wrapped up. We talked about quite a bit today, and I think we should wrap it up. So thank you again for joining me on my show today.
Thank you for having me.
And I will see you all next time. Thanks. Bye.